Hello, everybody. Good to see sizable audience tonight, and we have also people online. I want to welcome all of you for tonight's presentation. My name is Mohammed Tarani, and I'm the chair of the aerospace chapter of the Bonaventura section of the IEEE. My chapter, as well as others, we all look for volunteers to help with various aspects of the chapters, as well as speakers. So if you want to share your knowledge and expertise with fellow engineers, talk to me or talk to Darren, who is there, and we'll make the arrangements. We meet every third Thursday of the month. This is the aerospace chapters. Other chapters meet at other days. Let's see, that's for the preliminary, and we can get started and everything is set. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Bob Eisenhart, and he gave a talk last month. And tonight's talk is about the Silverplate project. It's a fascinating topic in all aspects of it. I'm interested to see what Bob will cover, which he described in the abstract. Bob he got his PhD from Michigan University in 1970, and he joined Hughes Aircraft. He worked there for 23 years, and he retired, and he was smart. He started his own company. Good for you. He also has been very active in IEEE in terms of leadership in various positions, as well as giving lectures like this and sharing his knowledge with all of us and many other people. So without any further ado, and I'll introduce Bob, and I'll give him the podium, and I think everything is set for you to start.
Eisenhart, and I'm going to tell you a story about the ending of World War II in the Pacific, 80 years ago this month, ending the destruction and likelihood of millions of additional deaths. This presentation on the Silverplate project is a brief overview of the people, places, and events that had to do with a complex laboratory experiment and turning it into what was used as a weapon of war, resulting in the immediate Japanese surrender. So let's get started. The Silverplate project was a military sub-project of the scientific Manhattan Project, which was the development of the atomic bombs. But before we get into Silverplate, we need a little background on the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project began in October 1939 with a letter from Einstein to President Roosevelt warning of the possibility of an atomic weapon from Germany. The project finally got going in October 1941 and had a big push by the attack at Pearl Harbor. It was led in the United States from 1942 to 1946 by the Director, General Groves, with the support of the United Kingdom and Canada. Groves graduated 4th in his class at the U.S. Military Academy. He had just finished as head of the Pentagon construction, which was completed in only 16 months. The Manhattan Project grew to employ more than 130,000 people and cost, pardon, didn't know that. Cost nearly $2 billion. Over 90% of the cost was the building of factories at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Hartford, Washington. These facilities produced the fissionable materials uranium-235, and plutonium-239. The result of the Manhattan Project was the design of 2 atomic bombs. 2 pictures of events that changed the world 80 years ago, August 45. At that time, these events ended the war in the Pacific. The Silverplate Project is about the special effort it took to deliver these bombs from Los Alamos to the front line of the war. Originally, the aircraft modification project was to enable a B-29 Superfortress bomber to drop an atomic weapon. Silverplate eventually came to identify the training and operational aspects of the program as well. The best or most qualified people from both the Army and the Navy were pulled in from wherever they were needed. Did you ever think of where these pictures came from? Well, let's find out now. Silverplate, who's involved? First, we have Naval Captain William Parsons, the Associate Director of Los Alamos Laboratory, New Mexico. This secret laboratory was where the atomic bombs were being developed. Captain Parsons was also head of Silverplate, which meant being responsible for just about everything technical except the bomb development itself. The Ordnance Division of the laboratory was headed by Parsons. He had responsibility for design and delivery of the bomb, and that is what we call weaponization of the bomb. Parsons was a Naval Academy graduate who had been in ordnance work his whole career. He was probably the only person promoted to admiral that had never been the captain of a Navy ship. Next, we have Commander Frederick Ashworth, already a veteran of extensive combat, assigned as deputy to Parsons. U.S. Naval Academy, Distinguished Flying Cross, and 2 Bronze Stars for action in the Pacific. Then there's Colonel Paul Tibbets, also a veteran of extensive combat and was considered the most qualified pilot in the Air Force. He is assigned to command the 509th Composite Group, which is the flying unit of the Silverplate Project. So the Silverplate organization looks like this. Under the Silverplate cover, Captain Parsons had the 509th with Colonel Tibbets to deal with the flight and aircraft issues. Parsons dealt with the other issues personally at Los Alamos and at Wendover, Utah, where the 509th was located for their training. As deputy to Parsons, Ashworth ran the ordnance unit. Designs for all of these activities listed were still in progress. Nothing was, this is when they started up. So the name Silverplate was magic. You could get anything and or anyone with top priority from the services. Colonel Tibbets immediately started bringing into the 509th experienced personnel that he had flown with in Europe. These men helped fill out the unit with the best they could find. Tibbets' background was exceptional. He qualified as a pilot in 1938 at Randolph Field, San Antonio, Texas. I throw in a comment here. I was born at Randolph Field in 1938. 1940 to 41, Fort Benning, Georgia, he was a special pilot for General Patton. August of 42, flying 25 missions for the 8th Air Force out of England. Late 42, he was chosen to fly Generals Clark and Eisenhower to Gibraltar for Operation Torch, the North African campaign. January 43, on the 12th Air Force staff under General Norstad in support of Operation Torch, Norstad ordered Tibbets to lead a raid at 6,000 feet. Tibbets said that was suicide and recommended 20,000 feet. Tibbets then offered Norstad to fly at 6,000 feet if Norstad would fly along as co-pilot. The raid was successfully flown at 20,000 feet. Afterwards, Norstad vetoed Tibbets' battlefield promotion to full colonel. February 43, after flying 18 missions for the 12th Air Force in North Africa, he was sent back to the US by General Doolittle to be a test pilot for the development of the B-29 aircraft. He had made many recommendations and modifications to the B-29s after accumulating hundreds of flight hours, working closely with the factories. What had happened before he was called back is that Boeing, they had a crash in the B-29 and lost their best test pilots. After a year of developing testing, Tibbets was assigned in March 44 as director of a training wing, a B-29 unit in Nebraska, to transition pilots to the B-29. Because of the dangerous reputation of the B-29, crews were reluctant to fly it. So to shame the male crews, Tibbets certified 2 women Air Force service pilots, that is, the boss. I think it's funny, to fly the B-29 as demonstration pilots. And after that, there was no attitude problems with the males. On 1 September 44, Tibbets was briefed on the Manhattan Project. He would be in charge of the 509th Group, a self-contained organization of 1,800 men, 15 B-29s in a high security and high priority mission. Initially, the 509th was planned to split into 2 units, one for Europe and one for Japan. Tibbets selected Wendover Army Airfield for its remoteness, development, and training. Meanwhile, what's going on with the Manhattan Project? Prior to creating the 509th Group, some earlier bomb testing had been done at Muroc Field, California. That's the initial field of Edwards Air Force Base. The Thin Man plutonium design was canceled because it was too big at 17 feet long. So in July 44, there was a new focus on Fat Man, the implosion plutonium design. October 44, Silverplate B-29s began arriving at Wendover. Bomb evasion practice, turn and dive, drop programs, bomb loading pits, construction, ballistics, and fuse testing. The 509th personnel became familiar with the B-29. December 44, Tibbets was promoted to full colonel. First test with the 10,000-pound bomb overheated the engines. Tibbets then removed all armor plating and gun turrets except the tail gunner. That took out 7,000 pounds. Important other modifications to the Silverplate B-29s. They were made with British bomb releases and a new weapon station. Also fuel-injected engines, reversible pitch propellers, and rapid bomb bay door actuators were installed. Once in a meeting with Oppenheimer, Tibbets asked what was the most dangerous thing about the bomb. Oppenheimer said the blast would probably tear the wings off the plane. Coordinating with the Manhattan Project, Captain Parsons would commute weekly as needed to Wendover, while living at Los Alamos. Tibbets also spent time commuting, but mostly was in Wendover. They did most flight exercises with pumpkin bombs. These were conventional aerial bombs replicating the Fat Man plutonium bomb and had the same ballistic and handling characteristics. Pumpkins were dead weight at Wendover Field, but later ones had high explosives for the Pacific. They were mainly for testing and training purposes, including combat missions. Each bombardier completed multiple pumpkin bomb drops before Tibbets declared his group ready for combat. February 45, the group received 28 of the modified B-29s. So they were ready. May 45, moving on to Tinian Island in the Pacific. Tinian Island North Field was the largest air base in the world, with 4 8,500-foot runways. These were needed to launch fully fueled B-29s with ordnance up to 20,000 pounds to make the 3,000-mile round trip to and from Japan. The secret area for the 509th Bomb Group was north of the runways at the bottom of this picture. Northfield was constructed by Seabees to house 50,000 people. Personnel servicing 375 B-29 bombers of the 313th Bomb Wing under command of General Davies. Here are the military bosses. All of these guys were on special assignments to the project for their respective services, the Navy and Army Air Corps. Here are the local 313th Bomb Wing brass that the 509th worked with for the administrative support. I'm using presenter's license here and showing the staff meeting photo, including my father, Colonel Donald Eisenhart, as staff commander to General Jim Davies, and Colonel Charles Eisenhart, my uncle, along with Colonel Paul Tibbets and all the other group commanders. So continuing with Tinian, Project Papacy. This was a selection of Tinian North Field as the location for the assembly and all activity associated with the atomic bombs. Location was very secret and highly secure. Only the top few personnel of all involved organizations knew what the fuss was really about. The 509th had a secure area separated from the rest of North Field on Tinian. They did share runway Able. The rest was private. You had hard stands for the aircraft. You had the bomb pits for loading of the bombs. You had the assembly buildings and the living quarters, all private. There was no mixing of the 509th personnel with the other groups at North Field. The only exception was aircraft maintenance crews. There was some assistance with the B-29 engines from the highly experienced 313th Wing personnel. More on Tinian. The 509th group had 225 officers, 1,542 enlisted men, and 51 Alberta project personnel. These were the bomb assembly technicians, just for the bombs. They had all the best facilities, 3 assembly buildings, 2 special bomb loading pits, and 7 Quonset huts for the work areas. For maximum security, all of the atomic bomb components were shipped separately, unassembled, and under guarded conditions on independent various ships and aircraft. On to the Silverplate combat training. First week after arrival on Tinian, the 509th men had to be brought up to speed on all the aspects of serious combat training. It didn't take long to where Tibbets was giving everyone a taste of the life in the fast plane. Every crew had to have at least 3 live pumpkin drops over Japan before qualifying for an atomic trip. In July, B-29 count was up to 19 available. Secrecy still existed. Even the personnel of the 509th group didn't know what the atomic nature of the bomb was before the actual flight to Hiroshima. So how did the bombs get made? This is the Alberta team I mentioned. Project Alberta was formed in March 45 and consisted of Army, Navy, and civilian personnel, including 1 British scientist. Outside of the handful of command personnel, these were the guys who really knew what the bomb was. Born out of the ordnance unit at Wendover, Project Alberta was now absorbed into the 509th group at Tinian, where it assembled and loaded the weapons and participated in all of their use. Many came from Los Alamos to form this unique team. The code name Alberta is just another example of how every time something could be kept secret, it was. So the use of code names was rampant. Consider what it took to load 1 bomb. Assembled bombs were too big to load directly under a B-29. They were transported from the assembly area by a specially designed trailer, which was then placed over a pit. The bomb is then raised off the trailer, which was then removed. Next, the bomb is lowered into the pit. B-29 could then be positioned directly above the bomb, which was then raised into the forward bomb bay by a hydraulic jack in the pit. The rear bomb bay section contained a reserve 625-gallon fuel tank, primarily there at 4,400 pounds to help offset the 10,000-pound bomb in the forward bay. In the meantime, while the 509th plus the Alberta are gearing up for action, what else is happening? Roosevelt's death had very little direct effect on the Manhattan Project. Note it was 13 days before Truman was even briefed on the project. May 7th, a 100-ton TNT blast was made at White Sands, New Mexico. Since they knew there was only 1 try to test an atom bomb, Los Alamos had a practice blast at a smaller scale, 200 times smaller than what they expected the atomic bomb to be. But they still had never had developed equipment to measure such a blast. So that's what all this calibration was about. They would calibrate and establish measurements and processes, basically what I said. Very worthwhile for the Trinity atomic bomb test. May 8th, it was clear that the bomb would not be needed in Europe, so the separate unit had been canceled. July 16th, Trinity test at White Sands. People finally began to believe. Even at that time, half the scientists that worked on the bomb didn't believe it was going to go off. Parsons observed the test from a B-29. Tibbets did not attend. He was too busy in Tinian. Project Centerboard, where and when to drop the bombs. Several cities had been spared from previous bomb attacks so that the damage of the atomic bomb could be more accurately determined. July 26, Japan rejects the Potsdam proposal from Truman. and from the Allies, actually. So Truman gives the go-ahead orders as soon as you can. So there were two different types of bombs used. The first atomic bomb was Little Boy, a smaller, thin man that was short enough to fit in the B-29 bomb bay. Basically, this gun design fired a uranium bullet into a uranium target, exceeding the critical mass to cause a fission chain reaction. Considered so simple a design that it was never even tested before use. 3 different plants were used to build the components so that no one would ever have a copy of the complete design outside of Los Alamos. There were 3 redundant fusing systems: barometric, which has to do with radar, or excuse me, altitude, and then radar, and then along with an arming release upon exiting the aircraft. The target and bomb gun assembly and uranium bullet left California on 16 July above the heavy cruiser USS Indianapolis, arriving on 26 July. The target inserts followed by air on 30 July. I feel I must note at this point the contribution of the cruiser Indianapolis and crew to the success of the Silverplate project. The cruiser Indianapolis delivered the Little Boy gun barrel and U-235 bullet titanium. Continuing on, it was sunk by a Japanese submarine near midnight on July 29. On the way to the Philippines, with only about 300 of the ship's 1,200 men surviving the whole ordeal. Almost 900 crew lost, the greatest number from any naval ship during the war. Now back to the Silverplate. Captain Parson saw 4 B-29s crash on takeoff within 24 hours of the Enola Gay launch. So he decided that they shouldn't take off with an armed bomb. An atomic explosion would take out the island of Tinian. As the weaponeer, Parsons spent the day before launch in the bomb bay practicing arming the bomb so he could get it right during flight. He wasn't going to leave it up to anybody else. Time for last minute briefings. This was when they first learned about the atomic nature, the crews. They're actually, and you'll see it in a moment, that there are 7 different planes involved with this one mission. And I'll show that. So that's a lot of people. That's over 80 some people. For Special Mission 13, the strike force consisted of a weapons delivery aircraft with the commander responsible for reaching the target and the bomb commander, the weaponeer, responsible for all decisions on dropping the bomb. A blast instrumentation aircraft, which would fly the wing of the strike aircraft and drop instruments by parachutes into the target area. A camera ship, which would also carry scientific observers. Each mission also had weather aircraft for each of the 3 potential targets: Hiroshima, Kokura, and Nagasaki. There was an additional spare aircraft pre-positioned on Iwo Jima to take over if the strike aircraft had mechanical problems. Dimples 82 to North Tinian Tower, ready for takeoff on runway Able. North Tinian Tower to Dimples 82, cleared for takeoff. Enola Gay took off at 2:45 a.m. It weighed 135,000 pounds. 15,000 pounds over design weight, needing every bit of the 8,500-foot runway to build RPMs and manifold pressure for liftoff. Quoting Tibbets, the B-29 has lots of torque on takeoff with the fuel-injected right cyclone engines, and it wants to swerve left off the runway. The average pilot offsets this torque by braking his right wheels. It's rough. You lose 10 miles per hour and you delay takeoff. Tibbets taught his pilots of the 509th group to cancel this by leading with the left engines, advancing throttles ahead of the right engines. By 80 miles an hour, you get full rudder control to counter the torque and go all engines full power. Flight to Iwo Jima was at 5,000 feet to arm the bomb. That took about 25 minutes. Safeties on the bomb were removed at 7:30, 90 minutes before time over target. And then the B-29s climbed to 30,000 feet bombing altitude. I'll make an extra comment here. When they armed that bomb, which was the little boy, which was the cannon type bomb, which fired the one pellet, what they armed it with was the explosive behind the bullet. That's what they kept out of the bomb before it had to be loaded in on the plane in the flight to Iwo Jima. They don't do that with the Fat Man bombs. It's all inside already. You can't mess with it. So the bomb was dropped at 9:15, after which the B-29s immediately performed a steep dive turn to avoid the blast. What Tibbets had his crew practicing after his conversation with Oppenheimer is to get the hell out of there. And the best way he determined to do it was to take an immediate, fast, 155-degree turn and down at 60 degrees angle and get out of there as fast as he could. And then pulled away at a lower altitude. The bomb fell for 45 seconds before going off, equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT, giving the plane the opportunity to get a safe distance away. Primary and echo shock waves overtook the B-29 a minute following the blast. The smoke cloud was visible to the crews for 90 minutes, by which time they were almost 400 miles away. The first blast comes initially hits the plane from the blast itself. The echo blast is the reflection of the blast off the ground. So it's slightly delayed from the second. They're both big deals. In fact, they estimated that they caused a 3G shake of the plane. That's three Gs, that's a hell of a lot. And that's why they weren't sure the plane could take it. Here we see before and after pictures. Ground Zero, Hiroshima, showed the effectiveness of the bomb. Note the 3-point bridge, which was the aiming point. Truman's orders were to drop the second bomb as soon as possible. This was a very different bomb, extremely complex. It is basically an explosive sphere that implodes into the small apple-sized pit, crushing it to set off the chain reaction. You see, if you can see it, the little red spot right in the middle, about the size of an apple, that's all the plutonium that's in there, 13 pounds. As compared with the little boy at 140 pounds of uranium in it and put off a smaller blast than this one does. The plutonium-239 core arrived on Tinian on 28 July, and the 32 explosive sections making up the sphere arrived by aircraft a few at a time. The second flight was set for 11 August, but moved sooner to 9 August because of expected bad weather. Pre-flight inspection discovered an inoperative fuel pump in the 625-gallon aft bomb bay tank. But a decision by Tibbets was made to continue because in his flight over to Japan and back, they never needed the secondary tank in the second bay. Boxcar lifted off at 3:47 on 9 August 45, with Kokura as the primary target and Nagasaki the secondary. The weapon was already armed. But with the green electrical safety plug still engaged. Ashworth changed them to red after about 10 minutes. I should have pushed that button earlier. That shows the small apple-shaped bore. Boxcar circled the assembly point. Now, when you had this flight, made it up with different timings on 7 different aircraft, or in this case, only 5 that were to meet. And they had to have a place where they assembled. They didn't fly in formation all the way to Japan. They flew independently, but they were supposed to meet. And at the assembly point, the photoplane was late and never did. The boxcar never connected with the photoplane. So they moved on. Both target weather planes ahead reported all clear. So when Boxcar arrived at Kokura, the cloud cover and smoke had increased to 70% of the area. And 3 bomb runs over the next 50 minutes were fruitless for bombing visibility. Now, this is an interesting point. On August 8th, Yahata, a small town nearby, was bombed by 200 B-29s, and the burning smoke fully covered Kokura, saving it from the atomic bombs. Now you can imagine that mission to Kokura, to Yahata, was planned and went on the 8th, and then they moved the other one up from the 11th to the 9th. You know, so they didn't bother thinking about the smoke coverage. The commanders, pilot Major Sweeney and Weaponeer Commander Ashworth, decided to divert to Nagasaki, bombing by radar if necessary. The bomb run began at 11:58, 2 hours behind schedule. And using radar, the Fat Man was dropped visually when a hole opened in the clouds at 12:01. The photoplane arrived at Nagasaki in time to complete the mission. And that's how we got the photos. Of course, they didn't spend all that time in Kokura either. Continuing the flight and 10,800 pounds lighter, the aircraft made a shallow dive from 30,000 feet, stretching the range to reach Okinawa, arriving with barely enough fuel for an approach. Sweeney tried to contact the control tower for landing clearance, but received no answer. He could see heavy air traffic landing and taking off from Yotan Airfield. Firing every flare on board to alert the field and other aircraft, the plane cut into the landing pattern, landing with only 3 engines and too fast on the shorter runway. Boxcar touched down on what was described as a controlled crash midway down the landing strip. The heavy B-29s slewed toward a row of parked B-24 bombers before the pilots managed to retain control. Its reversible propellers helped, but insufficient to stop the aircraft. And with both pilots standing on the brakes, Boxcar swerved 90 degrees at the end of the runway and stopped. Second engine died no fuel during this process. After refueling, they immediately returned to Tinian without any ceremony whatsoever. Sweeney was royally chewed out and almost court-martialed by General May for his errors in judgment. Orders were to drop the bomb visually, not with radar. The other options were to bring the bomb home or drop it into the ocean. The unofficial word is that the visual opening in the clouds was very marginal and that they were not going to land or waste it in the ocean. It has been suggested that something like, this is for the Indianapolis, might have been said. Anyway, they missed the target by 2 miles with less damage than expected. However, strategically, the Nagasaki bombing ended the war. Before and after pictures of Ground Zero in Nagasaki showed the effectiveness. The reference to the Indianapolis was because the main Japanese torpedo factory was in Nagasaki. The center of Nagasaki is about 2 miles to the southeast of Ground Zero. So Silverplate did its job under tremendous time pressure and complex conditions. Fortunately, most of the extensive training was never needed. Groves was shipping additional atomic bomb parts to be ready to use on 19 August, with 3 more available in September and another 3 in October. Both sides of the Pacific War are thankful that the ultimate head of the Japanese Empire had the strength of character to recognize the situation, override the military, and stop the war with a declaration of surrender. And on September 2nd, official surrender on battleship USS Missouri. And during the surrender ceremony, notice General Wainwright, who had spent the whole war in a Japanese prison camp after surviving the Bataan Death March in the Philippines, standing behind General MacArthur. And during the ceremony, a combination of all types of aircraft, including 400 B-29s from all 5 bomb wings, show of force. Then continuing flights over Japan. Oops, sorry. August 16th to September 20th, 45, after the declared surrender. Over 1,000 B-29 missions to 154 POW camps, delivered 5,000 tons of supplies to 64,000 prisoners. During these humanitarian efforts, 8 B-29s were lost at sea, losing 77 airmen. In summary, historians suggest that without the atomic bombs, the war would have lasted another year with Allied losses approaching 1 million and Japanese losses over 10 million, destroying the Japanese culture. Whoops, there you go. Thank you. Got plenty of time for questions, or I've got a couple of slides, but take questions first.
The Nagasaki was understood to be an actual target. It was like secondary. What was, you probably mentioned, what was the original target?
Kokura. Kokura. Yeah.
And was Nagasaki
A secondary.
down this? Was it?
Well, yeah, the list initially, the list is 3 Hiroshima, Kokura, Nagasaki,
Okay, so.
but that, with. They had 12 bombs getting ready, they were. They had a special committee back in Washington DC that decided who was gonna get bombed. I think Kyoto was originally on the list, but I think that was where Secretary something Stimson had his honeymoon, so he took it off the list. So they lucked out. And then Kokura lucked out because they were covered by smoke. Sure, right here.
There were 4 planes lost before the takeoff of Enola Gay. Was that just the difficulty of
Yes.
flying those planes?
All the time. Usually there's something wrong with the engines or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean they all crashed, they just didn't make the takeoff. For some reason, they stopped. Some may have crashed, like you saw the junk pile of B-29s down at the end of the runway. I could show you that again if I could get it on there. Let's see.
Any other question?
Right here. You see that? That was continual. Question.
So after the second atomic bomb, how quickly, how quickly after that was the operation canceled?
Oh, they didn't cancel the operation until the Japanese surrendered.
It wasn't until they waited till.
From the 10th, which was the day after the second bomb, to the 14th, they had missions going to cities all over Japan with regular bombs, continued. That they weren't gonna stop. Until
So
they
were just, but until they dropped the bombs, their only mission was to drop the 2 nuclear weapons.
for the 509, they were only atomic bombs. So they stopped because they didn't have another one ready yet. That's the only reason.
That 509th wing, they started dropping regular bombs.
No, the 509s didn't do any regular bombs. They weren't designed to carry regular bombs. But all the other 5 wings continued their bombing effort right on up until the day the Japanese says we quit. Question.
Neutron bombs that can destroy buildings, not the people. Is there any, have you heard of any neutron bombs?
I don't know anything. They didn't have any of that at this time.
Not that can destroy only buildings but not kill people.
Well, that's because you don't have the radiation. It's still gonna destroy people due to the blast.
You know,
But that's a whole separate section that people started getting into afterwards, after this project. Any question? Hank,
Oh.
go ahead, Andy.
For Little Boy, uranium was triggered by a bullet, right?
Yes, they hit one another.
Right,
They're both uranium.
and it had to drop, you said 45,000 feet, so that means.
No, it was about a 45-second drop from 30,000 feet.
35,000 feet, 45 seconds.
But it wasn't when it hit the ground or anything. They were exploded by fusing at 1900 feet to get the maximum.
That answers the question, that's how they timed it by
Yes,
fusing it and.
they had 3 different
So
fusing
it's gonna
mechanisms.
go off. If you better drop it, it's gonna go off. In other words.
Well, once they took it out of the,
It's not, I was wondering because there's no remote triggering
No.
or anything at that time.
no, that's why I said there were 3 triggering mechanisms. Altitude, it had radar on it, and a timing out of the plane.
Okay, I understand.
All 3, to have it go off at 1900 feet. That's the height that the Los Alamos set it up to be close to 19, you get your maximum blast effect. Question?
So your family was there. Did they talk about this with you? Like,
Never.
or was it still secret?
Never. Not that it was secret. just, you talk to all kinds of people that were in Second World War and they never talked to their families about the war. My dad never talked about it
So all this research you did outside of whatever.
after he had passed away.
Right.
He did provide me with a historical book of his bomb group. He started out being head of a bomb group, which has like 45 planes in it. And he went over in January of 45, led the 313th Bomb Wing to Tinian. And there were, I think, four bomb groups in the 313th. And then after a couple months, I don't know what happened to the guy that was before him, but he was promoted up to the chief of staff for the general in March 45. And his assistant executive officer became the bomb, the group commander. So, and of course, Charlie was up there too, my uncle, one of my, his brother.
There's one comment from the chat, the right cyclone engines used magnesium alloys for weight saving and cooling. There was a problem they eventually solved.
Excuse me, I didn't get the last part of that.
They used magnesium alloys in the engines, and
Right.
it says that the cooling problem was eventually solved.
Yeah, but they were burning up.
Yeah.
The magnesium was burning up. Usually the second row, that it's really like taking one 9-cylinder radial engine, okay, with 9 cylinders in it, and then putting another 9-cylinder engine in front of the first one or behind the first one, but where the cylinders are now between the other two. So hopefully you're going to get enough cooling, but the back cylinders weren't getting enough cooling. They eventually solved that problem, but in the beginning, when they were first doing their bombing, they had a lot of problems. That's why I mentioned that was the one area that the 509th interacted with the 313th bomb wing on how to handle these engines. Because they all had the same engines. You didn't want them to burn up. Question?
You mentioned Murrock Field early in the presentation.
Right.
What was there test drops there or? what was
Yes,
the-
early on, before the 509th was actually established. They were to get the ballistics characteristics of the bombs. And that sort of thing for the bombardier. Let me just show you a couple other little things here that I think are kind of cute. Let's see, I gotta go back to where it was. Okay. I don't know why didn't that work. Right like this, there we go. That's myself and my wife Nancy, there she is.
Thank you, Nancy.
That's on Tinian Island. They have a couple mock-ups of the 2 bombs there. You're driving around and can stop by. I think they're a little bit smaller in scale than the actual ones, but that really didn't matter.
Well, what year was that?
When we went here, well, I didn't put that on there. It's 2018. 2018. And here's when we were flying. We weren't staying on Tinian. It's just still there's not a lot of facilities there, hotels and things. But Saipan is really a resort for the whole East. China, Indonesia, Philippines, they all resort in the Saipan. It's amazing. It's like going to Hawaii, you know? So there was plenty of facilities on Saipan for the tour that we were on. Here we're flying back to Saipan and we flew over and got some pictures, runway Able, which was.
Is that still an operational base?
No, but it may be more so now because I've heard in the last year or so that the military is considering making it operational so that we have another landing another, as they look at it, it's a ground aircraft carrier, that's what it is. To have a place that launch planes from and bring them back to. Yeah, if we get involved with anything in the Far East, we'll have another base besides Okinawa and Guam. Those are really the only two bases that are really active. This is on the 3-point bridge. I'm never sure how to pronounce it, A-E-O-E, something like that. When we were there, we went to Hiroshima as well. And then the Memorial Dome. This was a hospital or something like that. And the question always comes up, why wasn't that blown up? It turns out that the bomb went off directly above this and the impact was straight down. And that's why it didn't blow the building over. If it had been off some way, it would have cleared it out like everything else you saw in that picture.
I think it was a car dealer.
What's that?
I think it was a car dealership.
Oh, maybe now.
No.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have an online question.
The total number of people in the Manhattan Project, I think you said how many people were involved, and then how many people actually knew what they were doing. Just curious. I think I heard that before. Like, there was an issue out of a core group of people.
The Alberta Project.
But then how many people were like, there was a whole Manhattan Project?
Well, I think it was 130,000 in the whole Manhattan Project. And most of those people were at the two manufacturing facilities, Oak Ridge, Tennessee and Hanford, Washington. That's where all the money, 90% of the money was spent putting those two facilities together to produce the fissionable materials, uranium and plutonium.
They had any awareness at all that they were working on like a bomb, or they just?
Well, the word is that it was always secret, even for all those people, it was all secret.
Then the core group, I mean,
Well, the people at Los Alamos knew. But even in the 519th group, Tibbetts and Parsons were the only ones that knew that they were working on an atomic bomb. They didn't even tell the other people flying planes until that mission the night before that they actually went. Was there a question?
Yeah, I have an online question.
Okay,
Yeah, do you happen to know how the project name Silverplate came about?
no, I don't know where it came from.
I have an idea. I have an idea. I'm not sure if this is correct or not, but the fact is that the pure plutonium is fairly reactive and it tends to oxidize in the air. And so all those plutonium pits are electroplated either, and the initial ones were used silver, and then they used nickel, and I think nowadays they use gold. But I was just curious if maybe that's how the name was derived, because of the silver plating on the plutonium sphere.
No, very possible. I just wouldn't know that answer. Anything else?
No, that's all. Just wondering.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
That was a
you.
great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from online? If not, let's thank our speaker once again.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and
Well, you got very emotional at some points. Is it mine?
I do.
Yeah.
I kept the real, I'll tell you about the emotional thing, okay? That I knew I would not be able to get through. When we were on Tinian, we went to visit Runway Able.
For what?
Runway Able, the main runway where they went from the atomic bombs, but also that was the first runway that was ready. And when my dad's group was there, he was also piloting, flying planes, all the officers, all the way up, even, anyway. So we went to runway Able at the beginning. I couldn't imagine sitting there, being ready to go, full engines forward, with an airplane you're not even sure you're gonna get off the ground. To fly 1,500 miles to Japan, 1,500 miles home. They all did it. They all did it.